Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving straight into how we, as educators and administrators, can effectively support some of the highest mobility, highest need students in our districts, those in foster and kinship care. It's a topic that requires deep empathy, sure, but it absolutely demands a structured approach. Let's get right into it.
Picture this. It's the first day of the semester. You're looking down at your blank roster, and right there, next to a specific student's slot, you see a name, and literally nothing else. Now that omission, it's entirely intentional. It's designed specifically to guard a highly vulnerable child's privacy. But for you, the educator, well, it presents an immediate challenge in understanding who is actually walking through your classroom door.
That single isolated name on your roster might belong to a student who has just changed schools 3 times in the span of only 2 years. I mean, just imagine the upheaval of that for a second. When a student is bouncing between placements, their educational experience is constantly, relentlessly interrupted. That number right there, 3 schools in 2 years, that represents a childhood defined by transition, shifting rules, and constantly disappearing support systems.
Section 1. The core problem. Continuity. Standard district supports usually involve a rotating counselor, maybe a clinician assigned from a massive general pool, or a paper file that transfers between schools with no actual human being attached to it. You know the drill. But these standard supports fail because they rely on relationships that literally reset with every single placement change. Contrast that with what these students actually require: unbroken, reliable support. They need one consistent adult and an unbroken clinical relationship that doesn't just vanish into thin air just because their zip code changed.
Section 2. Rethinking the first weeks.
We really need to rethink our standard assignments. As educators, we all rely on those classic icebreakers, right? But asking a child in foster care to bring in a baby picture or draw a family tree are ordinary requests that land incredibly hard. Why? Because it can force a painful, totally public self-identification in front of their peers. Honestly, no student should ever have to raise their hand in front of the whole class and explain why they don't have a photo from when they were infant or why their family tree looks a little different.
So, the crucial point here is taking actionable steps right now to prevent those small, painful moments before they ever happen. First, audit the first 6 weeks of your curriculum specifically for those family-based assignments. Second, pre-build alternative assignments up front. Offer them simultaneously so no student has to awkwardly ask for a special accommodation in front of everybody. And third, just adjust your vocabulary. Simply saying guardian or the adult who takes care of you costs absolutely nothing, but it makes your classroom instantly more inclusive and safe.
Section 3. Understanding testing behavior.
Now, when a student with a tricky placement history pushes your boundaries, they aren't misbehaving maliciously. Testing behavior is them actively using a survival strategy they learned somewhere difficult just to see if a new adult will stay steady. Basically, they are pushing you to see if you're going to give up on them like others have in the past.
And this is exactly why our reaction is everything. When we mistakenly treat this trauma response as standard misbehavior and we just route it right into our regular discipline matrix, we unfortunately just repeat the exact cycle of rejection they expect. Sending them to the office just validates their worst fear, that you're just another temporary adult who'll send them away the second things get tough. We have got to break that pattern.
Section 4. Guarding trust and privacy.
This literally cannot be overstated. Placement details are strictly need to know. Informal disclosure or casual gossip in staff spaces is the most common breach of privacy and easily the most damaging. A careless comment in the staff room about a student's foster status is exactly how trust ends permanently. If that info gets back to the student or bleeds into how other staff treat them, you have completely shattered the safe haven you were trying so hard to build.
So, knowing all this about the nuanced classroom experience, we're left with a massive, critical question. How do we build continuity fast? Like, how can a district systematically scale this required stability when students are constantly moving between buildings?
Section 5. Building lasting support systems. Let's look at a systemic solution.
The MentalSpace school model is completely designed around this concept of unbroken support for K-12 students in Georgia. By assigning dedicated, non-rotating therapist teams directly to schools, rather than just pulling from a random pool, they ensure actual continuity. So, when a student changes buildings within a district, their vital clinical relationship easily survives the move. Add in same-day teletherapy, crisis intervention, and culturally competent licensed clinicians, and you've got a safety net that actually travels with the child. It's a real game changer.
Let's talk about removing structural barriers.
They do this by offering dedicated family and kinship caregiver counseling, plus support for those upcoming July 2026 compliance mandates in Georgia. And crucially, access is prioritized. Services are at zero cost for Medicaid families, they're in-network with major plans like BCBS, Cigna, and Aetna, and they remain strictly HIPAA and FERPA compliant, fiercely guarding that privacy we just talked about.
Now, I want to be clear here. Assessing trauma-related needs absolutely belongs to a licensed clinician, and obviously, no one can guarantee specific clinical outcomes. However, MentalSpace School's relentless commitment to access and consistency drives incredibly powerful results across the board. We're talking 92% reduced anxiety, 89% improved attendance, and an 85% family satisfaction rate. When you finally provide steady, reliable support, these students can focus on thriving instead of just surviving.
Everything we've covered in this explainer today, from auditing your first week assignments to reframing testing behavior, to utilizing robust district tools like MentalSpace School, it all boils down to one profound truth. Consistency is the resource these students have had least of. Our ultimate goal is providing the one consistent adult and the one reliable clinician these highly mobile students desperately need.
I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought. When you walk into your classroom and look at that blank roster tomorrow, and you see just a name, will you be the adult who finally stays steady? I hope this explainer has given you the structured tools and the perspective to make sure your answer is a resounding yes. Thank you so much for joining me, and thank you for being that steady anchor for your students.